Guten Tag. Hello, welcome to the Goethe Institute. We do it a bit less formal today. It's an internal group, and I'm very happy to welcome you here and to welcome Andreas Siekmann, who's a very well-known artist in Germany. Let me dare to call you a political artist. We can discuss this later if this well fits. He joined Documenta 11 and 12 and famous Kulturprojekte in Münster as well. Today he will present, a base for a discussion about privatization processes. The background is the Treuhand-politics. We just discussed how to translate in English. I don't know, trust privatization agencies. This is a wide definition how you can deal with this. It was founded in 1990 in Germany, probably all knew it. He was in charge of managing and privatizing the industries of the former GDR. And I think I do not exaggerate if I call it was not a success story. Welcome Andreas Siekmann, we're happy that you join us, and I'd like to welcome our partners as well, Fedor Blascak, who will be the moderator later. Thanks Fedor for coming today, and Ilona Nemeth and the Kunsthalle director. Thanks for joining us. Today is part of this exhibition of Ilona Nemeth, Eastern Sugar, and I think your issue fits perfectly to what we will see today. Welcome, and the floor is open.
Hello. Hello everyone, thank you for the invitation. What I want to show is a work that I have done 13 years ago. So it was, I make an investigation after 10 years after this so-called Treuhand-politics. So that is this kind of agency that was in that time the so-called biggest company in the world, because it was a company who owns 13,800 companies with nearly 4 million workers. That was this kind. And they have to privatize this in a 3.5 years. That means 10 or 15 companies a day has to privatize. And this was a role model, at least for the whole European politics. We will see, I bring only an example from Greece. That is still the same agency today, and they have to offer more than 600 islands and so on for the market to get the money to pay the debts. Why I make it as an artist, this kind of project? Because for me it was very difficult, first of all, to understand the economic terms and also the economic procedure, and also how it works and how this kind of debate between the politicization and depoliticization of economic self-understanding. And so I start with interviews, because for me it was difficult to understand the privatization of these East German companies was at least a liquidation of 88% of the industries, and how it's possible that it's this kind of positive effect, and also why the resistance at least was not so hard. We have some, I can show you later, but why it could happen and what does it mean. At least this politics was a big change of so-called economic paradigm. It was the end of this so-called Germany company, Deutschland AG or Deutschland AG, and it was the beginning of the so-called speculative investment capitalistic thing. And it was the big occasion with this so-called shock doctrine that the big companies, consulting strategies companies, and the investment banks can triggered in all the institutions and ministers. Today we have no ministerium or no company without the big four, that is PricewaterhouseCoopers, Deloitte & Touche, Ernst & Young, and KPMG, perhaps you know these kind of things. So they are on both sides, on the side of the company and on the side of ministry, and they are writing the laws. And that is the most difficult thing, that you cannot escape from it. So, and that this kind of Treuhand-politics was the initial point of this kind of politics. For example, the strategy consults daily for the Treuhand has a cost of 9 million euros a day, only for consulting costs. So, but with this kind of big industry, so that is only the influence. Okay. So it's called deals under pressure. because I think it's here also the same, that if a country has to privatize in a special time and under pressure and not to lose any contact to the world market, then you have to pay any price and you have to accept any conditions. And these kind of conditions as a ritual, and you see the change of the four suitcase of these four different interests. So in the beginning on the left side, you have the Kapitalanlage, that is so-called investor. Then you have this shareholder value interest. Then you have the politician on the right side, that is the financial politics, and that is also very responsible to the parliament to find a consensus. So that is this kind of steps. So my language is why I use this kind of pictograms. So that is the common pictograms, because it was a project. It was organized by artists in Vienna by the Institute for Statistics in 1919 and 1920. And it was a language to educate and also to find a language to describe the political economic circumstances and how it's possible to declare with pictograms this kind of procedure. Today, I think it's very common in the media that people all the time say it's too complicated. We have to find the facts, check outside the medium, and so it's not possible to declare. And that means at the same time, it's also to delegate this kind of expert and expert procedures so that people are completely separated from what they are doing. And so it was my aim, how it's possible to formulate with a language that normally commit the industry processes to commit the deindustrialization process, because it's an industry process, this kind of deindustrialization. Because 10 or 15 companies a day, you can imagine. Okay, so that was the languages that was developed by Treuhand and Otto, perhaps you know. There was also one guy, I think from Czechoslovakia, Czechia and Slovakia. It's called August Chinkel, perhaps you know. August Chinkel. Okay, so that is this kind of idea of graphics. Here you see also their political direction. These groups was organized, you can say it's social revolutionary or anarchistic motivation. They was not part of a communist party, but they was related to them. But they criticized all the time the centralization of communist parties. So at least you can see also was describing since the time of Foucault we know the parallel of military and economics, and also this kind of this kind of 8 hours working, that was an aim. They go back. That is, you see, perhaps you can see the subtlety of the graphics. You see the visitor of an entrepreneur of a company, and over him you see a crane, this or you see here also the company owner and the digger. That is August Chinkel from this region. So it's only want to describe how they describe political, economic circumstances in that time. So I take this language also, this kind of so-called machine, Mensch-Maschine. So I think that is also a very big issue also since our days, because I think the big data is nothing else at least that our dates will load it in our DNA at least, because the big data today, it costs too much energy and we cannot solve, and at least it will be that that not the machine and human beings, we will be part of that and all the consequences. Okay. Okay, that is their thinking of economics. It's very near to the so-called Wirtschaftsdemokratie, economic democracy. That was also after World War II the thinking of in Germany, and it was developed also in the rough time before the Nazi time was coming. And this kind of thinking is to democratize economics in every sense. So also for the cities, for the families, or for the environments like this. Okay. I have not so many time, but so it's only to jump. Then they also developed a very famous statistic mapping. It's called Statistischer Weltatlas. It was published in 1930. It has a crazy situation because in 1929 there was the world crisis, and so all the dates of this atlas was not accurate. So that was this kind of the idea to see if you talk about economics, you have immediately to talk about world economics. That is strikes. Okay, and also the idea of these groups was to keep this information and this kind of in public houses or in entrance of major houses or schools. And so it is this kind of program. We have in some fashion today this kind of quotation. So that is an actual program. That is the privatization agency of Greece. And you see in the right side above all the privatized airports from whole Greece. It's bought by the Lufthansa, Fraport, all the airports. So for 1.1 billion, 18 airports. And you will see here also the islands that you can buy, and here that is in the group of the agency, where you can buy islands, hotels, streets, power station, telephone, whatever. And this kind of, this today, so this kind of politics is still actual in the field. That is, it's called Hellenistic Republic Assessment Development Fund. So, that is the name of the, there's nearly a same sign. It's also very crazy. Okay, that is the groups, that is the groups, and so I only show the different spaces. So that was, I jump now to my work because it was also my aim. After this investigation, to have also kind of a Treuhand room, so that people can go through the information and can move with information. And see there's a lot in the middle you can see later a film about there's a machine. Why the machine? Because of this kind of mechanics and the mechanics of procedure. And also there's a tradition of this, before the film was starting, there was this kind of machine, it's called Theatrum mundi, that was mechanics by figures that can move, by moving the figures itself. And this mechanics was developed and built by former workers from miners and industry who get unemployed. So the first big wave of unemployment in the mid of 19th century in Thüringen and in Sachsen, they developed, because there was no social money or unemployment money, and they developed with their knowledge of mechanics, of mining, these kind of figures and go to in fact, what is Jahrmarkt, Kirmes in English?
Kind of a fair.
A kind of a toy fair on marketplaces where the people can make their theater with these mechanical figures and get some money. Okay. And there you see the machines and the housing of the machines I will show you later. We are now in the back side, are these houses where all the responsibilities of the Treuhand-politics is installed, so that the figures go in front of this housing. You see here the headquarters of KPMG, one of these kind of Wirtschaftsprüfung, economic assessment center. Okay. So that is the space. And now we start with this kind of program. So how it works. So it is. I try now to take the 3.5 years and try to make a kind of line as a kind of Egypt reading of Egypt paper. So we have 4 lines. You go from left to right, and it starts with this kind of. The starting point of the Treuhand, because the name and also the idea of a Treuhand was organized before by the people from the GDR itself, by this so-called civic movements against the party SED. So it was done with the idea, because also it's not a word that don't exist in English languages. It's called Volkseigentum, that is people properties. But it's, as an economic term, it don't exist as an English word. It's very interesting. Okay. And here you have the third way. You have here different ideas how to make this kind of transformation from a socialistic, centralized, organized economic to this kind of new economic thinking. And in their thinking, because there was this kind of Demokratie jetzt, demokratischer Aufbruch, Forschungsgemeinschaft, Selbstorganisation, that was all this named, they have the feeling they are now the protagonist for political responsibilities. And so they make different models to share. I think here in Slovakia was also this kind of idea to share the companies that was also in common grounds, in coupons, in vouchers. There was this in the beginning, but very quick they changed in the auction version. The best deal is the quickest is the best. But it was like this kind of question. And so there was different papers, look here, like this, how they can, and one paper for me was very interesting. It was here, but I think it's too small to read. It is really a kind of 16 million printed papers with sharing for the 16 million inhabitants of the GDR to take part in all the economics that was developed by all the people. So this kind of, you can say, deadly consequence and the idea, but that was this kind of how to share and how to make makes people's property real, because at least it was only the name, at least it was in the hands of the functionaries of the parties. Now that is this kind of, so in between, and that is this in between, they had this endless discussion, you can imagine. At the same time there was a fair in Leipzig, industry fair, we are in between two political situations. There was this kind of, it's called the original Fedor holding, it's called Treuhand. So it's like this, so the deals that happens during this process with the companies was black deals, but it was legitimized later, all the deals. So you can say when the Iron Curtain falls down in Berlin, 3 hours later the first house was sold for 6,000 D-Mark. So there was people, it was open, 3 hours later, first house was sold out for 6,000. So it was like a huge primitive accumulation that happens. But in between, in a time you cannot imagine how quick. So that is here the last lesson, and here was it. Okay. So it's only, ich muss mich ja schnell haben. It's okay? Okay. So that is, I only made photographs, so that is these guys who found the Treuhand. These 4 guys made this Treuhand. The name, and it was former a GDR idea. Then it was taken, that was the Treuhand, how it looks like. Okay. So that is the deals, and then you can see here the new company names. So immediately also very high educated international contact functionaries also create fictive names to sort out the knowledge of some companies to Western world at the same time. It's called Lincoln Pharma Win, and they make this kind of people of this joking about the Western industry of this win-win situation and win word, and so they make this win. So it is this kind of thing. Then you see immediately all the products was at the same time out. All the people keep the Western product and sold only the Western product. So it was also this kind of processes to kill your own economics because you kill your own products. You know, this kind of thing. And then you see here also immediately the production of unemployment people. At least more than 3.8 million people was unemployed. At least also the politics of shadow banks, the politics of shadow households was also the beginning with this type of politics. For example, all the debts that the Treuhand agency produced, it's more than 256 billion euros are coming at 2025 to official households. So for people is not there, because otherwise all the political class, like Helmut Kohl, will be the biggest producer of debt. So the trick to make this so-called Erblassentilgungsfonds, I don't know the English word for this, this kind of, this is typical German, very long nerves, and so they put it in a shadow household, so that it's not named in the household. And it comes in 2025 with the official household back, so then they have to pay. So it is this kind of how it works and how election was working and how this legitimacy. And that was armed card that was very full of army bodyguards who bring the D-mark. You can't believe it, it looks like in South America. Okay. And here now I start now here this kind of that people can change from East mark to D mark, and then they start normally to one, and it was because of to make people acceptable. That was one side. All the time, the economics says it's a disaster because normally the hidden currency, the hidden change currency was 1 to 4. And it was related to the productivity of economics, it was the same. But at least it was realized that with 6,000, so you get 1 to 1, and over 6,000, 1 to 4. So what people are doing, they cut their accounts in a lot of 6,000 pieces, and then change all the time. Say, okay, like this kind of things. And then you have here all the time strikes and union influence, and it's a very ambivalent situation. On one side, you can say they fight for the rights of the workers who get unemployed, but at the same time, they want also to protect their members of union of the Western companies. So for Western companies, the GDR was only a kind of client. So they have not the idea to get this kind of economics autonomous, or I guess a kind of concurrent or competition. So they only want to conquer and to get the client and to reduce. So there was this kind of very clever strategy to fight for their same salary like the Western, but at the same time it was clear these people has to go. You know, it's a very perverse, you understand, the perfidity of strategy. Because the only only advantage these economics could have was the low salary. If you have the same salary, you have to go. Understand? So it looks like solidarity, but it was the opposite. So that is very early, you see. And so it was, I think, 6 weeks after the DEMA. Okay. So that is this kind of agency building. This building where the trial was happened is a very sad building. Today it's the Ministry of Finance. Because before it was the Ministry of the DDR, and before it was the Army Reichsluftfahrtministerium,
Air Force.
Air Force Ministry from the Nazi time. And it's I think the second biggest building in Europe, and it has still this kind of, it's called the Finanzdesk of Europe. And that are the dependencies. So they have all in the former district of the DDR dependencies of this Treuhand, that is the headquarters and this kind of thing. That are the companies, they are still existing because all the contracts that you have, also the cross-border leasing contracts and all these kind of tools they found there, has to be controlled because it's contracts for 30 years, 99 years and like this. So there are also still a lot of grounds that are not still sold out. Even also the very poison grounds. That is here the agencies, and it was very difficult, in brackets, difficult to get the directors of the executive board because they get 50,000 D-mark a month, but for economics people it's not so many money as if you are a management, if you are a manager. So they asked to help people and like to make this to go, and it's called, they get extra money, it's called, also very typical name, it's called Buschzulage. Buschzulage is if you go in the jungle So this kind of racistic thing or colonial thing was this kind of thing to ask people, please go there. I know it's less money, but you make it for Germany and you get extra money, and it's called Buschlager because you work with the wild. Yeah, it's only this kind of typical things that happens. That is all the people are names because they are. So that I show all the hierarchy of the agency, how it works, the press, and all the people, and what kind of jobs is. So I try to find out in this kind of pictorial language all the tools and the professions that was created. And I showed in this kind of language like workers or industry processes. Yeah. And that is also I think one of the mistakes you can say today that they divided the economics in areas that has belongs to textile, metal, chemical, and that means at the same time if you put so many the same companies or in the same direction on one market, you reduce all the prices because you produce your own inflation of this. Understand? So then, and former it was 8,300 companies with this kind of agglomerate, and that was divided in 30,800. We can see it here in the language, in this kind of Einheiten, also to privatize. And then it's this beginning, that was all the workers, and this was nearly 4 million. The idea of this kind of method to show in this kind of line is not to make people boring, it was the idea to have a small chance only to imagine the numbers. So you see a number, you cannot see the number, so we have to count. In this moment of memento mori, you can think about what does it mean, because otherwise we learned to figure out this kind in business graphics, and it's so abstract that it's nothing but keep in your mind. And this kind of Verräumlichung, or to make it in a kind of room, so that you have to go through, then you have the chance perhaps to imagine what does it mean, 4 million people like this. So in that time you see also the laws, here in the laws, and also the posters of the election, and you see the posters of the parties was very far away from what it economically was processing. And that is clear because the Treuhand was a very clever outsourced institution that is now very common. The whole European Union is organized like this. If you say to you the word Euro group, nobody will know what the Euro group is done. And if you check and you look out at the right subject of the Euro group is not in the European Constitution, but it's very powerful because the Euro group installed the Troika. So all this kind of, also we have it like Frontex, I can see who protect us in the mid-seas, also an agency outside of our political institutions. So it's an agency outside. And the Treuhand is the same. So what is it? What is the idea of that? The idea of that is that you divide power and to build a wall against for the government. The government can say it's the politics of the Treuhand, and the Treuhand say it's related to the political class. So you divide also the resistance because you have two addresses, and the addresses is not responsible. This is not elected. It's not a ministry. So all these kind of things is a very clever tool how to deal. So that is this kind of passion. Okay. You should take liberty. The poster of the Greens with also important issue because of abortion, paragraph 218 with Mona Lisa, but it's very far away from this kind of economic things. Okay. And here's also, I think, that to see this kind of option in the hand, I think that will be also happened in Slovakia. So that was this kind of selling. And it was possible because all the unemployment people was paid by the Treuhand. So you were not responsible, and they get only this kind of Abfindung, so this end money for workers, and it was, the highest was 6,000 D-mark. It's not so high, because if you get unemployed in Western Germany, you get 30 or 35,000. So it was at the same time very big. So that is this kind of how you make the deals with the Treuhand, if you can, as an entrepreneur, as a company, how you want to buy a company. I don't want to do it like. And then you make conditions. So the Treuhand asked before, because the most interest of the company was to deny the company, to sold out the ground, and to get the clients for their products. For example, the company Henkel, Henkel who makes Persil, they lived in Düsseldorf, I lived at that time in Düsseldorf, and they asked also, please Henkel, make a company in the new Bundesländer. And they say, we produce so many Persil that 60 million clients in the DDR is for us only one night more. That's whole Persil. So they have no interest. So they get only companies if they get the subvention or if they get this ABM. So that means that the workers get in a kind of convention company that they make normally sometimes very hard. They have also to deconstruct their own company by money. So like this. And then you have also this kind of ecological things to deconstruct, because a lot of grounds was poisoned by cadmium, quecksilver, all this kind of industry processes. That was the next offer to fight for, and at least they get also subvention money. So this kind of step, and it's a very psychological moment, because the Treuhand is under pressure, workers are under pressure, and they can make the deals. You understand that this kind of thing. So there was also some entrepreneurs, because I saw it like a company, it's like a merry-go-round. It was like Siemens or also other private companies buy 30 or 40 companies with different complete areas, only to make money, but not to install any jobs. Because there was no expertise, so people are not controlling ideas. So they only promise with money, but the money is not money, because they take the money from the investors. So the investors take the money from the debt from the company who bring the money. You understand? At least there's no money. That is this is ritual. Okay. So that is some examples. There are some famous examples of a lot of criminals you can imagine. We have also an institution for that. It's called ZERF, Zentrum für Einigungsbedingte Wirtschaftskriminalität. So, and it's enormous. So we are also talking about of hundreds of millions who escaped or disappeared. And then also here, also very interesting, because for the political, also to install these figures you see in the layout, they come from the 20s. Yeah? They figure historical costumes, and that is because of the former owners, also before World War II. That is and that, if you see, every figure is 100,000. You can see, so it's an enormous number, and this number of 5% of the election. So this is an enormous tool to make politics. And there is also this, I think, of return of property, like IG Farben. You know IG Farben? IG Farben was one of the biggest companies in the Nazi time. It was divided after World War II in Höchst, Aqua, Bayer and BASF. Today, every company is bigger than IG Farben itself. Today. We have the same problem today with BASF and Bayer, because now they are owner of Monsanto and put all the oil in the world. Okay. This is Altania, and they asked, they come back after World War II, after 50 years, because not to install a new company, but to get the old grounds, the old property back and to make it also a kind of Aktiengesellschaft. So to make one I know it's too much details, sorry. Okay, I make some rhetorical question, that is also this kind of, that they couldn't solve. That is the process in real, what is going, it's only the address of the clients that they get. So I try to find a language in these kind of pictorial terms to the whole processes. Also that is, they produced a book, it's called Handbook of Privatization, how to make it, and like this kind of tool. So that is this kind of how to make the price of the company. It's called the Busen-Bradley Verfahren. So it's very old-fashioned because they don't evaluate it the know-how of the workers, also the knowledge of it. So it was only registered the facts, the machines, and the logistics. And so therefore you reduce this as a basic thing, how to make the value. And that is the real capital intensity, it's in German Kapitalstock, and what was between East and West, 1 to 4. So I try to transport it is in 1 to 1/4 of what is productivity. And also how to convince people when you make the deals. And it was a company car with a chauffeur, and that is to Daimler. So if some of the Betriebsrat, of the leaders of the workers, deputy in the headquarters, he get convinced to accept the privatization because they give him as a present to Daimler, Mercedes. He get Mercedes for that. That was the protest of Daimler. This kind of language. Okay. So what can I see? Yeah, so here it's also this kind of how to make this kind of election and work council, and also how to persuade people to make this get earlier in pension and into reduction, and also how to make it in the kind of social compensation plan. So how to buy people out, so that they have not Ansprüche or what. Okay. Bill? Expectation on pension and like this. So that was really outside, so that we paid out. And that is now this kind of producing of unemployment. And now they get more and more this kind of illegal thing. In that time there was also this Maastricht, in 1992, and that was this kind of still of European Union, the exception not to produce any debts, only 3% of the household and like this. So that is also very influence for the whole privatization process. So that you not pay the people, or you make it this kind of state companies or state central companies. So that is so when you have all this kind of agri-crop, you can say. Okay. So, and you can say here's some of this kind of resistance. There was also a hunger strike in Bischofferode, where there was some cases that as a kind of contention was a culmination point for frustration and resistance, and therefore was this kind of hunger strike in front of, and also to buy a share from BASF and to make a lot of protests, rough protests in front of the Treuhand. But that was in that time Bonn, and that is in Berlin. Like you can see it's the Henry Moore in front of here is. Okay. You see here also this kind of Aussperrung. And at that time, also this kind of Bischofferode is überall, so was the idea to generalize this kind of problematics and also to buy a share, one share, so that we have the right to talk 3 minutes about the situation. Because the BASF buy all the Kali Werke in the DDR, and it was related to Helmut Kohl because He's coming from a town, from Ludwigshafen, where it is in like this, and so when the election is near, it's in the system. Okay. And that is all these kind of programs. ABS, this is to renovate companies or to deconstruct companies, and also ABM, that is this kind of to make a kind of compensation companies to make fake work at least, to promised work, so that keep people in working procedure in the hope that you get on the first market, we divide it into first, second, and third markets. So all the time they produce unemployment. So that is the backside all the time that you see on the other hand. So in the uprising social costs. So at that time also the politics in China was very important, because in the beginning of the 90s a lot of companies starts to internationalize their production, and so they play the political class and also the Treuhand with the say, if you don't make this condition, we go to China. And so China was at that time this upcoming partner for politics. And here you see also the next election posters, and you see also resist taxes because they has feared that the debt production produce taxes. That is the Liberal Party. So that is all the time very far away from the economic processes that is behind. And also there is this kind of net jobs. Net jobs was also very normal word for that. So that is at least, just 22 pages, that is at least the debts. And every thing is 10 billion a month. So also with this kind of debt, only to show the imaginary of what it is, this kind of debt. But I think today we are completely polluted. We have no ideas of numbers. So now it's only because you see it's so difficult to, that is A and B, that is only this kind of what happens in between, and also this kind of export of this kind of politics at that time. At the same time there was office in Ulaanbaatar, in Tallinn, in Tirana, in Prague, in Almaty, only to make this technique for the East Park. Also this kind of how to make this kind of privatization as a kind of campaign. So you make talks, you make talk shows, you make congresses, you make this kind of stock exchange. So you make all the time this kind of crowning, also this kind of employment carousel is called Treuhand effect. I don't know the English word, you know. So the people, young people who come directly from university, go to the Treuhand agency, make some proposals for some companies who want to buy, and they make a good deal for the companies and get immediately director of the company. And like this, you know, so this kind of, and people are changing now, it's very common. I think people here are throwing bananas as a protest because of the Banana Republic, but in Germany it's, I think, since the government of Schröder, it's very clear that the political and economic things is a kind of merry-go-round, so they can change whatever they want, so that it's not any longer in the consciousness, because the Banana Republic is coming from Maria Remarque, 100 Jahre Einsamkeit. You get a Nobel Prize in Literature for this book, and he describing the coup d'etat, also the coup d'etat by the United Food Company, Chiquita Bananas. You know, that is the reason why the bananas are coming in Banana Republic, because that was, at least that is where they're coming from. So that is also, there was office in New York because of this kind of contract, because cross-border leasing contracts are only possible in the to make the contracts with the tools of like fresh fields and all these kinds of lawyers companies who make international deals like this, and in Brussels. So it's the last one. So only this kind of catalog and how you work in this shadow bank and all the tools that when people are coming, so with this upcoming of private business schools, and also this kind of tools that is not also this outsourcing of political responsible institutions like mundi, that nobody will know what it is, but it was very influenced. Also these consulting companies like Roland Berger coming there. All this kind of so that is the Adam Smith Institute, and they have also this Hayek medallion, Hayek, this kind of founder of this so-called Austrian national economics. He was a teacher of Milton Friedman, and the son of Milton Friedman, Patti Friedman, is now the director of a seasteading institute, perhaps seasteading institute from California. That is this kind of new state buildings outside of 30 miles from the seas, and make this kind of platform economics, and there's no responsibility related in taxes or in any states. There's this kind of seasteading. This kind of people who want to exclude it completely. Okay, that is what I have done. Later. And now I show only more Tina, this acronym, there's no alternative, it's Tina. And it was very common because the director of the Treuhand was Birgit Breul, and she was also very strong, She was the director of an agency of more than 3,800 people who worked there, and she was compared a lot with Maggie Thatcher in Britain. And also in this kind of, now we have in Germany to do what in the Thatcher time in the 80s happened in Great Britain. So a lot of portraits of Maggie Thatcher was instead of a family portrait there. So all the time they say Tina. There is no alternative. So but it's only to show it's like a room. So the idea was like in the library that you can go through and that you can go with the glossary through and to sit there. I think now we can finish. And then, that is this kind of tools what I taught you before of what is a Theatrum. That is this kind of figures. You see they can move and they have this kind of mechanics and move. Good. So now you can show the film and you can talk. It's only just an alien to see how the figures are moving. Wollen wir mal eben rausgehen hier, dann kann man auch den Film machen eben. Genau. Dann gehen wir rüber.
Thank you, Andreas, for the presentation. When you say that they, some mentioned the term they did it, they did that, they do this and that. Whom do you have in mind? Actually?
Oh, it's different. Also, perhaps I make it not clear enough. Also, on one side, we have this kind of agency. So we have a huge bureaucratic apparatus, but then you have also this kind of management, and also this kind of huge industry of strategic consult companies and the investment banks. So the investment banks, what it is, like Merrill Lynch, Goldman Sachs, and like this, that are companies who has not a bank account. So they accept only clients after 5 million. So they can make industry politics, they bring from one day to the other 50 billion on a table. That cannot do any state. So I want to say that this kind of clients, so that is what, perhaps it's a bit difficult to say they, because it's such a big scenario, but at least I think it was this kind of, to install this kind of politics that we are still completely dependent on, and we are completely separated from, and we have also no imaginary, no pictures, and from that, what is economically the case. I think that is the most difficult thing, why I talk about they.
They, so like rich people.
Hmm?
Rich people.
No, they are not rich. I think we cannot say they are rich, they are this kind of
Super rich.
No, it's not. No, it's not like this kind of. No, where people are all the time under hurry. They have all the time to serve some dynamics that we cannot imagine. I think that is not this kind of. They are not the owner. I think that is the most difficult thing. For example, if media show the Deutsche Bank, German banks, normally the media show the two towers in Frankfurt. German Bank is not in Frankfurt. They have 2,000 different companies. 600 companies are in the derivat. So we have no imaginary of what is it. So I cannot say it's the rich. No, it's not like that they have a big sponsor. No, because they are only the Verwalter, the administrator of pension funds, of money that was former based on state responsibilities, and this money has to go and has to run every day. And for example, if you see the stock exchange, normally that is in the news to educate the people. But if you check, only 2% in Germany has only shareholder, only 2%. But the news is complete influence of breaking news related to this. But at least economically, we have a 900 times bigger money outside of this world. That is only by this PIMCO, Fortress, State Street, Vanguardia, so this kind of companies, BlackRock, that is completely separated from. So that is not this kind of rich class, so people who worked for enormous money.
Okay.
Right? So then it's so difficult because then it's so easy if you say, oh, he has so many money, he is it. No, it's not like this.
I see. So,
Okay.
So let's make a few steps back. Is this project your private war against capitalism? Is this project sort of your private war against capitalism?
What can I say? I think because what does it mean against? I think this is a work only to try to figure out, or is it possible that we have a language to describe what is economically the case. So I think before I can deconstruct or smash capitalism, I have to understand what it is. And I think we are just still very far away to understand what is going on. I think that is what I see. Or, for example, look at the politics of European Union. People are all the time has no ideas what is going on. And if we have European election, we have 35% of people who elect, and we have no ideas what they elect. And if you see now, the European Parliament has no power, it has only the function of advice, and the European Commission you cannot elect. They are 17,000 people who get named by somebody, and he has represented companies. So that is what I can describe. So,
yeah, I see.
so capitalism is also a big word, and I think we are completely separated from a lot of things together.
Is the story of Treuhand considered now in Germany as is there any consensus on the story of Treuhand in the sense, as you said in the introduction, that it's a failure? Is this a general consensus in the press when people talk about that time, that when they say Treuhand, everybody on the top of the mind they have this word failure?
I think if I want to get interviewed with one of the kind of manager of these 50,000 email manager, I make no interviews. In the sense of producing articles or books, we have more than 50 kilometers literature, 50 kilometers of Treuhand. And then we have also that since in the year of 2050, a lot of dates are not public, and it's not allowed for public to see. Also, if you have this kind of contract, what is a cross-border leasing contract? The first paragraph is that all the people who see this contract has to be secret. The second is the so-called Freistellungshaftungsklausel. All the people who underline this contract are not guilty. So it's this kind of God's contract we have. And still, in these days, there's no cross-border leasing contract public. No, so that is this kind of area. That is what I also to show how difficult it is. Also, what at least the companies was sold out, or what at least the Russian army gets as money is still under not allowed.
Okay, so this is your work. So it's a mystery, and your work is a way to bring a light more light into that historical occurrences and into that era. 1990s, beginning of 1990s. So this is what you do, bringing more light into this misty,
yes,
obscure economic transformation.
Yeah, I mean the field of art. It's also the idea of what kind of reflection we can have. So it's also reflection about languages. It's also reflecting about Vermittlung. This kind of. Is it possible, and also to, as art also has a function. If I see art historical paintings like this, it's also related to some concrete historical facts. And normally you believe or not, but you see also the languages of the facts. And I think that is in between. I feel more also responsibility in this kind of sense. To make a kind of documentary of what it happens, also related to the fights of what the people done, and also for the rights of people, and also for the privatization of power that is part of our time. Yes, so we have this kind of.
If people in 2,000 years from now will dig into Earth and they will find this your pictures, do you believe that they will, because this is kind of an iconic language, the reduction of very complex processes into a very simple iconic language. Do you believe that they would get the sense of it, as when we go to Angkor Wat in Cambodia and we are looking on these kilometers of reliefs which represent some events from 800 years ago, and we basically don't pay attention to them because we don't know what the events were about. So we need someone to tell us, and then we have to admit that it's so much of it. This history is loaded with so much of content that we basically don't, we cannot absorb it. So do you believe that this reduction of into an iconic language helps people to to be more historically conscious, even if they don't know the context, or do they need?
It belongs, first it belongs to a shock. It belongs to the shock because when you say if we have a kind of catastrophe and it's a long time in between, so that knowledge is lost and you have to refine the knowledge. I think that is what I say. The shock. But I think we live in a time also, and I make my research, and it is possible, belongs also to the intensity, what you want to know, and also on what kind of level you want to go in. And therefore I think then it's possible, because we have so many medias now to keep the knowledge, or to share the knowledge, so that we have not this kind of lack of knowledge. But it belongs to the catastrophe. If we have the kind of atomic catastrophe, you don't know whether all the dates and all the ships will be destroyed. No, I think it's not the question. For me, it was this kind of motivation that this kind of position, this kind of responsibility to this kind of procedure, that we can keep on and keep it understandable, so that we are not so separated. I know that it's normally it's a failed project. It's clear because I am an artist and I have this kind of procedure of 13,800 companies, this kind of gigantismo and this kind of big politics, but at the same time I think it's also very important not to give up. And I think to give up, and that we are now in a situation and that a lot of people give up with this so-called post-factic and not to believe in any facts and like this and that. And they flew now in this kind of convention of national identity politics and not to see this kind of failure and this planned failure. So a lot of companies, even also the California industry, go now in this kind of alt-right, right-wing movement only to deconstruct information and the de-information and the alt-fact politics is the best politics because it keeps the people complete under no ideas, no belief, and so people are really under shock because they cannot make any facts against. So they are really like.
Okay, so you think that
this kind of question and that's related to this, and I know it's crazy to do it, but in one sense. In the other sense, it's very important and not to go in the opposite, and we are now in the opposite, and you see it's a kind of tool how to govern people. So if you only lie, if you make these 140 letters and you make people completely, they believe nothing, so you can make with them what you want. And I think that is the most difficult situation we are now in, and that is called post-factisch. For me, I see in German news we have now in every news now this so-called fact check, and you have also the pictograms to declare what is Israel politics, what is this, so what is this, so that people can keep in mind and not go in their blogs and in their direction. They get radicalized by their bots. 45% of all the things are machines. People believe in this kind of machine lying, and they get and I think that is the situation we are now in.
Yeah, but you were facing the challenge to select the facts. You were facing this challenge of selecting the facts you are going to.
It's here why I make also this kind of naive machine. For me, it's very important with this kind of difference between the power and the people who has to react. It's a very primitive thing. So it's not so. They say it's complicated. They make this kind of apparat of lawyers and like this. So that it seems like that is a big knowledge behind. No, it's very primitive how it works, and so I wanted to keep it how it is. So that this was kind of what I tried.
So do you believe that this project is a mirror image of that era, of that specific context of that era? I mean, this economic transformation of the
Can I say-
GDR economy. So this is a plus minus very truthful image of how it really happened.
No, I'm an artist. I work in a hegemonial field. Art is a hegemonial field, and so I can only intervene in this field. So I know, and I make this piece, and now it's bought in the public collections, so it's good. But it was a big fight, and you can imagine, because a lot of clients in the artwork are on the other side. So and I make this lecture, first lecture in Mönchengladbach in the museum. There was one, he was responsible in life, and he said, what you are telling, you produce terrorists. That is the perspective. So it's not like that all people accept it or like this, because for a lot of people it's still the belief that there is no alternative. They are thinking it's only like that.
Okay, so do you believe that, let's say, socialism is a dream that is worth dreaming? I mean, this old school socialism we know from 70s and 80s, for example, from this also in Slovakia.
Oh, but I have to disappoint you in the sense that I think it was in Germany this was called, in West Germany it was called Kasernenkapitalismus. I think it was not this socialistic thing. So that was the reason why I show you the farmer groups of, I think we have more with the ideas of the 20s to do in our time than in the 60s or the 70s. Because in the 20s, people was really thinking in alternative, left alternative economics, and not in this kind of, that 68 produced only the Gangbücher institution. It was only to make a new corporate design for companies at least. And I think, but we are now in the time really to, and I think it's really also basic needs to think in new responsibilities. We cannot continue this kind of economics, also in the European Union. Can you imagine, because our resources, I say before with the big data, because if you only imagine the blockchain technology that our government now think it's the new alternative, it's only to, instead of the trust and belief institution, you make a huge technological eco-space, like a band tension panopticon without center that repeats, and that it's so worse in energy you can't believe. Only the deals of the Bitcoin, cryptocurrency today, take an energy of more than 159 countries in the world have an energy. So that means this kind of belief that instead of institution we have this kind of enormous, it's a question of money we don't have. So at least our thinking of competition economics wastes so many resources that we have not the resources. If we take our economics behavior from European Union and think the world can do it, we need 3.5 world for the resources. We have only one. So we know that this kind of economics must be shared, must be reduced. We have to give up our richness. We have also to take care, look, overfishing seas. And we can read every source that we can read. It's not going in this kind of perspective. There's no perspective in that. So I think we have to do it. But this kind of alt-right movement, I think it's a complete anti-production.
May I have a question? Could you please clarify a little bit more on what you mentioned about these KPMG and other consultancy companies you mentioned? What does it mean? Can't you make a law in Germany without these consultancy companies? Or
Yes, and I think you can see it in Berlin now, in the headquarters, in our place of Washington, our Regierungsviertel, where KPMG, PricewaterhouseCoopers, they are all on this kind of Bannmeile. They are directly, and if you look from PricewaterhouseCoopers, you see Kanzleramt. If you go behind this KPMG, in the headquarters of the Christian Democrats Union is KPMG. So they are really very near, and they have, if you go in every state, they are very now. So PricewaterhouseCoopers has 280,000 lawyers and people who make this. So they have more information than normally the political class. Because I think that is the most difficult point, because it's like it's starting with this dividing of power, because they have the tools, they have this kind of political, they are the experts, and the experts they get the permission from the political. So we have this kind of a dispositive, and a dispositive that you cannot decide.
Okay, so do you believe that bureaucrats are a bigger threat to social justice and democracy than oligarchs? Is it so? Oligarchs, I mean very rich people, super rich people. You say that the bureaucrats are bigger threat than oligarchs.
What can I say? It's so difficult, because I think we live in more and more in the time of oligarchy. I think Trump is also an oligarch. So I think this, at the same time, I think it's the figure that's starting with perhaps in the 40s with these game theories, economics. Yeah? I think this homo economicus, that the people was believing that the economics are still the rationality. I think this is complete over. We are also now in the time of designing markets. Also, the designing markets are not related on information. There's a lot of investigation of people who tried to make this old feedback system, and they make this nonsense production in social media. The results for the economic procedure was the same. So what does it mean in the consequence? We have economics that is not any longer related to the people. So it's only designing market, people are forced to do it. And therefore this kind of oligarch system, I think it's only a transmitter. I think it's a figure in between, because we have a big accumulation crisis, and all the time in human beings' history, accumulation crises are situations before wars, normally before wars are the situation, and at the same time you will see that the flying capital that is going around in a speed you cannot imagine if you imagine the high frequency trade and that this kind of procedure. I think it will be flew back to the States, but in the States that is not any longer geo-territorial, it's economic territory, so it is like export production zones or like this. And therefore the capital will take the state and make it like this. But I think the oligarchy is only in between, but also I would say, like in the Marx history, if history is only repeat as a farce. And I think what we are seeing now with these kind of oligarchs, they are like a comedians and repeat something and it's really a farce.
And well, just to make it clear, for me at least, what is the essence of your critique? What is the essence of your critique? Is it the mechanism, how the redistribution was done? Is it the capitalism itself? Is it the consequences it has till now? Or is it the obscurity of these consequences that we basically don't know which consequences these are? What is the essence of the critique? What you don't like about it? About this redistribution, about the Treuhand as a role model for privatization?
I think it's, at least you can say perhaps a critique to an ideology of this kind of what is behind, because it has nothing to do with rationality. You know, they produce debt, a lot of debt. So it's not like that is successful, but we feel it's like successful, and we feel there's no alternative. And this kind of pressure, and also this kind of politics of fear, what we are in, I think perhaps this kind of question to make also in this kind of reducing images, and also this kind of take it in a simple way that you can criticize them, because it's not complexity what they think it's complex. I think everybody knows, if you ask, for example, perhaps this is an easy example. If you ask people in the streets what they think about privatization, I think a lot of people was completely against, because they think it's not right. But instead of what the news and the media are producing, they only make connection to people to feel how they look like, what the kind of image, what the people are thinking about the people. So they said, and I think it's the same procedure also with art, like part of the celebrity or yellow press phenomenon is at the same time. So the subject production and the subjectivity is in sometimes like kind of opposition of what people wants to tell. And I think if you make the news not on personal central, on people, and you make an election on consequence, do you want privatization? You will complete another result. This is very, very clear, and then you can understand why I'm trying to have this kind of critique. It's difficult because I only show, at least now, because it's 20 years ago, it's a fact. What happened? It's not like that I make a very ideological or left thing or a Marxistic or whatever. No, it's not like this. It's only like this fact. But it's very difficult that people accept the facts, and because it is because nobody wants to accept that is complete stupidness and crazy. So we don't want that we produce craziness, because our brain and human beings is not only the egoistic accumulation machine. It's not, human beings are more, a lot of more. And I think that is what is the motivation to do it.
Yeah, but economics is a very banal, basically, banal fragment of the human being. Maybe in economic behavior, in economic realm, it's just this is the state of the mind, that accumulation and more accumulation is the driving force for acting in the economic realm. Maybe
Yes,
it's just very natural.
And you know, we have not the time and also the resources to continue like this. Because
To me,
climatization, you know, the first word that Donald Trump was quitting out of the paper was climatization. It was the first act, the first after half an hour after on the Bible. So it is, and he do it not in the sense that he don't see that climatization exists. He only wanted that it's not a kind of investment program for states. He only wanted to privatize this kind of thing and it's this kind of, can I say, like a shock doctrine, and also to fit with climatization is the same shock.
Okay, the summer is coming. The summer is coming, so let's see. Maybe the last issue I want to talk to you about is the concept of privatization. To me, the paradox is that private property was not existing in socialism. It even the term didn't exist in vocabulary. It was called personal property at the time, or common property, or personal but no private. And the paradox is that right after the revolution in '89, the privatization was this echo chamber of the desire of this societal body. You know, everybody. You know, privatization became the very Stichwort, and this is the paradox of that time, of that moment, because people were aiming to for something which they basically had no experience with. In Slovakia, here I can tell you about a story about an example. People went to the Vienna to buy video recorders immediately in December '89, longing for the new stuff. But till today, the same people, they did not resolve their property rights to the land they inherited via restitutions. It took them 1 week to get the new video recorder, but even after 30 years, they still didn't resolve the property rights for their own land. So to me, this paradox says that basically the people after 40 years of socialism, they really don't understand. It takes 30 years, and we see that they still don't understand what it means to be an owner. Like to be an owner means that you have, let's say, contracts. That there is a big mess about when we are talking about privatization in the beginning of 90s, because the people were basically, it's like talking with children about very complicated mathematical formulas. You still can try, but basically that makes no sense.
Perhaps we can jump, because in Germany there is now also the discussion because of this enormous uprising of prices of ground, that also normal medias like Arch Plus or in Munich civic society start now to find a law and a tool that is not any longer possible to buy grounds. So only that you build, so they learn from the Tiger State or from China, because otherwise we have now the situation that the ground is growing higher up than to build a house. So that it's completely counterproductive, this kind of privatization now, and after 20 years now, they have perhaps to find a complete another tool, because with this kind of ground it's anti-productive at least. So they start now to think, oh, we can only buy the house but not the ground itself. And that is really coming from really not left people or like it, so very, because it's a basic needs now, because it's this kind of accumulation is really not productive. So
my point was that to search for a moral judgment, or to judge the process morally, is not it's not an adequate goal or a strategy. It's not adequate intellectual enterprise now to search for a social justice and to morally judge the privatization process in the beginning of 90s, because for the simple reason, basically people did not know what things are. They were like kids in an atomic in a power plant. So basically they just had to make it just blown it up. This is my point. When I see your project, that it's about searching for some kind of a truth, some moral judgment. It was not good. It did harm to some social groups, but it could not be otherwise, because if people have no knowledge, it really is about there is no alternative, because knowledge brings you alternatives. If you have no knowledge, then the Margaret Thatcher is right by definition.
Yeah, that was, can say that was part of the motivation also to share knowledge and to say what it is. But I cannot say that privatization at least is a solution for society, because there's a second acronym by Margaret Thatcher, and it's called thin stuff, and that was the word, there is no such thing as society. And I think that this kind of question is going deeply now in this kind of procedure. The C-study movement is nothing else as the deconstruct society, and also I think the failure of identity politics also in the field of art. We are now with our biography separatism or with our identity of people of color, of people of cis or cis or whatever, is nothing else as a kind of to find a kind of neoliberal subjectivity, and that you are in your combination the one only possible in this kind of thing. I think that is also a kind of misunderstanding of subjectivity, at least. So we have to make investigation about the new subjectivity of this kind of machine thinking of people, and also this machine thinking of states. I think that is also the question why people now elect all the time entrepreneurs as a president, because they think the state is a company. No, the state is not a company, and I think that is complete misunderstanding. But it's this result of this, I think, also false misunderstanding of homo economicus that don't exist, because this kind of John Nash equilibrium that comes from the game theory, it's taken over in the 90s.
Yeah, but I think it's quite natural, because if the people witness the failure of the state and the failure of politics, so they just simply start to believe to entrepreneurs, because this is what remained functional.
Yeah, not really. Not really, because also if you have this kind of, if you read this kind of primitive accumulation by Karl Marx, also that to bring people out of country into people by country, and you cannot keep the country if you're not invest and if you're not in this kind of ground. At least you lost the ground. It's not standing like this, but people think they want what I have. I think it is.
Okay, so what is your dream?
I think we have to quit with this kind of competition economics, because it wastes too much resources.
Okay, so that's easy to say unless you are paid by public funding.
By public funding here.
Yeah, here, for example, German taxpayers.
Not so many.
But who are those people who pay taxes? These are these entrepreneurs.
No, because of it kind of, because what we don't see by also like exponential growing, but we don't see is the failure. So we only see the winner of the competition, but we don't see the effort and wasting of energy of the people who get not the deal, but it's the same amount. I think that is this kind of question we have. For example, if we have this huge fishing in the seas, the whole coast of Africa is dominated by China, European Union, Turkish and Russian trawlers. People describe only the coast because they have no electrification. And in the night they have the feeling there are cities in the sea because of the trawlers. So what does it mean? They overfish the seas and they throw tons of fish away because it's overfished of competition. So that makes no sense. So we have to quit this, because otherwise, if the sea has no fish, we get a lot of problems. It's like with the bees. It's like this. I think that is the moment that we have to do. And I think the people and also the alt-right movement or this kind of right-wing movement don't want to see this, because they want to continue like it was, but it was. So they work all the time with the imaginary. Make Hungary great again, make Poland great again, make America great again. But it's an imaginary that don't exist. Because we know that we have to change our system.
But look how
I think that is the problem.
But look how politically successful it is. Sure.
For whom? Only for them, and you have all the time to close your eyes because of the bad news. If you only see the Mediterranean Sea, or if you see, but then I only have to say, to see the film of Aaron Farotti, Nicht löschbares Feuer, when he described the function of media and how he put the cigarettes on the hands. I think that is possible to see. Because it's not function. It's only function because we are completely protected.
Any remarks, questions, anybody?
Yes.
I would be interested in your artistic approach. I mean, I really found it quite convincing. But I wanted to ask, how is the reaction of the audience and public? I mean, you're using these kind of pictorial icons in a way it was a bit forgotten, I would say, from the 20th and 30th of the last century. And nowadays we all know icons, but simply in the way to guide you to the toilet or something like that, in a totally non-political way. So did it work well?
I think that is perhaps one of the same advantage, because for this work I can say I show it very international. I show it in China, in Russia, in Argentina, in America, in England, so and it goes because it's a subject matter that related to many countries, and also with this kind of, and it's possible to read. Also, it's very close reading and very tasty, but it's so. My thesis is, if you go in this kind of artistic research, close reading, you find a symptom that is more understandable when you only generalize it. So in that, and therefore, because the devil is in the detail, and only then it's understandable. I think that is for me this kind of mission, in the sense of to be a successful artist in the art world. I think that is not the aim. I think then I make the wrong job. So as I take only the occasion, that is why I say this maximum what I can do is intervention in this field. Because this field of art is so dominated by investors or money givers, or we have now this kind of, in the art field itself, the kind of contradiction. Perhaps you know this story about free ports. Perhaps you have heard about free ports. We have in Switzerland, in Luxembourg, in Singapore, free ports. That is artistic storage full of art, but it's completely excluded by public to that is the alternative of a tax fees community worldwide to put the money in art pieces like Picasso or Leo Rauch or whatever. So and that is completely excluded by the public. So at least the price, the high prices of art is to exclude it from the public. And I think that is the complete opposite of why artists are working, at least. And I think it's, so art in itself is also this kind of, it is not outside. So I'm not naive, and I know if I make this work, I have to pay a price for that.
Isn't it so that art was meant as something exclusive? You know, that art is in essence exclusive? Something special?
I worked a lot about this kind of pictograms, because for me it was a possibility how it's possible to work with image, information, and development and processing together in one thing. That was so I want to make a second machine about the work, about the development and the enormous influence of think tanks. As you know, this kind of think tanks that is related to get influence in the political thinking and in the procedure to infiltrate the political heads. It's a very, very difficult issue because of conspiracy theory and whatever you can say. But at least also it's such an important thing that is also not very well discussed, because other people don't want to see it. You see news, the sources of the news mostly are people from think tanks. This Carnegie Mellon, Bertelsmann, or whatever. That is, so that is this kind of thing. So I also show this kind of process as an industry process, because think tank at least is a contradiction in the name. A tank for thinking. Thinking is only free, and not this kind of shoot in one direction. So that is this kind of question.
That's nice. Do you like Romanian artist Dan Przowski?
Yeah.
Yeah? Do you like him?
Yes, I can say yes. I like him. I like also the jokes. In some cases, for me, I miss sometimes. It's also only a German word. Sustainability sometimes. So because like the capital in capitalism, capital is one and this is a lot. It's like it's like that the joke gives some or humor gives some people to have a distance and to laugh about, and I think it's very important about our circumstances in one sense. In the other sense, sometimes it's only the German word, der Witz bleibt im Halse stecken, aber you understand this, and that happens sometimes.
What does it mean, sorry, the word that you said?
Der Witz bleibt im Halse stecken, so the joke, you cannot eat because it's like it's closed in the neck.
It's not really funny, you know. You explain a joke, but you feel at the same moment it's somewhere not getting out of your mouth. It remains.
You cannot really consume, so it's like so in between. That is what I think about.
And your cartoons or icons, it's not about the humor. You are very serious.
So it's a lot of humor inside. I hope so.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Yes, because if you see the machines and how it's working and how it's moved, I like very much to transform it. But
I would call it serious humor anyway.
yes, it can be. We have also very bad word like viel Spaßbremse.
Okay, is it enough for you for tonight?
After mentioning Friedrich Hayek and Milton Friedman, you said something about some organization in California.
Yes.
But I could not understand.
It's
very well.
Seasteading, perhaps you know Seasteading Institute. Also it's a huge movement. It is this kind of people like Peter Thiel, you know Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel is the founder of PayPal. And like this, and this guy is also he's one of the big supporters of Donald Trump, and he's also very related to the art scene, like Simon Day and all these people. So it's like
and startup scene also.
Yes, and he gets every 2 weeks blood from people under 25 because he wants to convince the deaf. It's a very old dream. You have also this dream in the avant-garde of Russian. This kind of yes, and this is called seasteading. That is kind of oil platform, and you have like a fantasy architecture on it, and it's this kind of companies like Google, like Google, Apple, Amazon, and Apple, who makes this kind of artificial intelligence. And I think this kind of subject matter, because I take part in the exhibition, it was in Seoul and in Beijing about artificial intelligence, and because in this context it's also a very huge issue, and it's really a kind of scenario you can't believe what kind of dimension is coming in the next confrontation of technological. For example, there was a company, it's 100% daughter of Google, and the CEO was former the CEO of ARPANET, former net of internet, and she goes like Steve Jobs, up and down. Her heart is black. You see only the mobile slide because he wants to film the historical moment, and she was talking about that this company has a big offer to all the people that because the computer development are now in this generation that they overcome in the terabytes of the brain. So we are now in this kind that the new normal computers get more capacity than our human being's brain. So and therefore, what does it mean? The human being's brain has the capacity to see 6 Hollywood films at the same time. So what they want that you get a chip here outside, and then if you go on the internet to, for example, to make research about bitcoins, if you get only some web page, if you permit the company during the time that you visit the website, that they take the capacity of your computer to develop Bitcoin mining. So these processes of sleeping is now at this chip, and during you are sleeping, you give the company you sold the capacity of the brain to develop mining processes for this kind of companies, so this kind of things. And you think it's like like a David Kronberg or whatever, but you don't think that is real and it is.
Maybe these machines they can see simultaneously 6 Hollywood films, but if we would play them, maybe if only one Tarkovsky film, they would just go crazy.
They want
They just stop working.
They don't want that you think. They only want that you rent your capacity for recognizing. So okay.
Okay,
So very same.
the future. Okay, the future. Thank you very much for tough talk.
No question, please.
Thank you.
I would just
Thank you very much.